Still waiting on the entry music.
Yeah, yes, you would think from a DJ.
Honestly, it's only been like 3 or 4 years.
There we go. That's why I gotta wait. And it is 6 o'clock Central, and we are live for Triple T number 172. 172 of these things going on. And here we are, April 15th, 2025. My name is TJ Zebel. I like to call myself a professional problem solver, which I always have to follow up with no, I don't know everything. I just have a unique way of asking lots of questions to help people find the answers they are looking for. We are live on YouTube, so everybody on YouTube, hello, hi mom, love you mom. And for those of you on YouTube, if you would please do me all the YouTube favors that cost you nothing but really help me out, do a favor and click the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave comments, and comment on other people's comments. And if you got things you don't like, just go to somebody else's profile and type them in there. Just kidding. Not really, but kind of. What else? Oh, I have a website like a lot of other people, but we've been working hard on it. And it'd be a good time if you haven't been on it for a while, go check it out again. Do the old Where's Waldo type thing to see what we've changed, added, modified, and all the above. How do you find it? Pretty easy. It is theTSWB.com. THETSWB.com. The tall, skinny white boy. That is what it stands for. Always has, always will. I don't care what you find on the internet. I was the tall, skinny white boy way before the internet, so I win. My rules. But what do I do? A lot of it's listed on the website for what we're dealing with here. I have the honor and privilege to help people with depression, anxiety, phobias, PTSD, grief, relationship challenges. Still getting a lot of relationship stuff, so I'm happy about that. I get to work with athletes for performance enhancement from beginner all the way up to pro level, and a whole lot of other stuff. I'll leave it at that. But I also offer a free, that's right, no cost to you, 30-minute consultation. That is your chance to get a hold of me and we can chit chat for 30 minutes and go over what kind of challenges you might be up against and see if I'm a fit. And I promise you, if I am a fit, I will let you know. But I also promise you, if I'm not a fit, I will let you know and I will do my best to help you find the right person to fit the needs of what you're looking for. Okay, deep breath, on with the show. Time to introduce the tie of the week. We are doing some so this is, I think, all repeats now. I think I've shown you guys everything that I own. So those of you that are joining for the first time, I started this last year, January, first show in January, and realized that I have almost 70 ties. So we're changing them out every week. This one looks like a power tie. The clues are in the details. Those of you that know, and those of you that don't can keep guessing. For those of you that are joining us for the very first time, thank you so very much. And those of you that are watching the recording, if you're new to Planet TJ, the way it works, it's a 2-hour webinar. First hour, I have 3 topics that I do my best to get through. And those of you on the call know exactly what I mean. And then for the second hour, it's open mic, open platform. Anybody on the call is encouraged to ask questions, bring up topics, and everybody on the call gets to answer first because I like to learn as well. And if I feel that there's anything else I can add to the answers, that is when I will offer up my 2 centavos. 2 centavos. And but I also like to start it off with asking anybody on the call, is there any cool stuff? Tell me something good from the last 7 days. What do we got? Lenora.
I'm super happy to share that I finally got my YouTube channel back in functioning order, which is very exciting. And I actually made 2 whole videos this week, which is even more exciting. And most likely, my first official book will be available on Amazon come the first or second week in May. So stand by.
That's right. Pre-order now.
No, not yet. It's not.
Lots of for an extra charge, you might be able to get an autographed copy, one of the first editions, so that
There
when
you go.
famously awesome and the world knows about her, you can boast that you have a first edition copy.
So super excited.
Very cool.
Yes, and thanks to TJ for writing a review for it. That's in the book too.
You earned it. Anybody else? Quiet week? Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes no news is good news. But if nobody else has anything awesome to share, then I guess it's time for us to deep dive into this week's topics. And this week's topics are the cast, a car, and interviews. So, when you guys saw that, what popped in your head when you saw the cast? Anybody? Anybody?
Like the cast of Friends.
Good
Are we
answer.
casting a line for fish?
Look at you go.
Are we fishing?
Ironically,
With Triple P, are we fishing?
this came out of a little story that my wife told me about a friend of hers who, her and her husband traveled 26 hours to go on a hiking trip. And the first day, she tripped and broke her wrist.
That's not good. You're a
Yeah.
hiker and you use hiking sticks. No, 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 no.
Yeah. So she knew that there was no way she was going to be able to finish the hike because this was a pretty grueling hike. And yes, hiking sticks were not only recommended in some areas, but actually required. So her hubby, being the fine man that he is, also decided he wasn't going to go and he was not going to leave her in the chateau by herself. Yeah. Lots of
It's taking
different.
quite the turn.
Yeah. My wife knew that if I was the one that broke my wrist, she would be hiking because I would not be sitting in the chateau after we traveled that far on a hiking trip for both of us to sit in the chateau. I also know that she would not allow me to sit down in the chateau with her if she was the one with the cast. So different strokes for different folks. But that's not the full lesson of the metaphor that I got. When we require a cast, typically because we have, of course, broken something, it causes lots of limitations, and we hope that whatever was broken inside has the ability to mend correctly. And the thought came, a couple of squirrels of mine, by the way, if you're new to Planet TJ, just so you know, I chase squirrels. And my squirrels know squirrels that have squirrels that chase squirrels. So you're welcome to ask questions, and it could lead to any rabbit hole and take us off topic. And as long as we're learning, that's fine. But one of my squirrels brought up this idea. What about when we have things like a broken heart, broken trust, and we wrap a proverbial cast around it in the form of walls, limitations, avoidance, space, in the hopes that it heals properly. But we're also at the risk of missing life. Kind of like when you've got that cast on your arm. What does your arm miss? The flexing, the workout, and the muscles start to, what's the right word other than
Be mobile, be
Atrophy.
flexible.
atrophy? Yes, muscle atrophy. And I've known a number of people that have had casts, and when they get the cast off, what does the skin look like? From lack of access to proper air and sun and all the above, it basically deteriorates. And to give you a little insight about some of the adventures I've had, when I went to Europe to work and travel, the first job I had was working on a dairy farm. And I may or may not have possibly over elaborated my dairy farm skills. Anyhow, the third day, my boss is up on a very high ladder, and it slides out from underneath him. And he put his hands down to make sure that his face stayed the same condition it was in, but in the process broke both of his wrists. I went from farm help to farmer in a land that I didn't speak the language. And we rushed him to the hospital, and when he came out, he had both arms in a cast up to here, almost to his shoulder. And the first thing that crossed my mind, he lives alone. Now I'm there. I am not here to help you in the bathroom, or feeding, or getting dressed. I was here to help milk cows. And so the restrictions that were put upon in that situation Luckily, his parents lived close enough that they came over and mom took care of her not so little boy. And his father, who spoke zero English, and I got to take over the repairs on the farm. Luckily, we made it work, and about a week later, he convinced the doctors that he didn't need to have casts all the way up to his shoulders, and they cut it to mid forearm, and he was allowed to do much more work. And I think that's kind of like, again, when you use the metaphor about putting a cast or walls or limitations around your mind, your heart, whatever, because something happened. Somebody did something, somebody said something, you got your feelings hurt, all the above. How long are you going to be willing to have those limitations in place? And did everything heal properly? I've seen a couple of people who, when the doc did an x-ray, realized that the bone was not set properly and had already started growing back together in a bad way. So guess what they had to do? They had to re-break it. Sometimes I wonder if our higher person or guardian angel or all of the above saw us with this massive cast, this wall, these restrictions around our heart and our mind. Notice that it didn't get healed properly. How are you going to learn? Well, we're just going to have to break it again. In my practice, go ahead, Mark, please.
No, I was just going to relate a story. When I was 6 years old, I broke this arm and I turned a bicycle into a catapult. And if you can see it,
Yeah.
this one didn't quite heal the same way. So, and I was in second grade. Of course, that's when they were teaching us the Palmer method and how to write cursive. And
Yeah.
Sister Danietta took one look at me, said, "Well, you can't write with your right arm, so you're going to," and I was a righty. She said, "You're going to learn to write with your left." So I think it rewired me because I write left-handed now. I have all the skill, like darts and whatever, in my left hand, and all my strength in my right arm. And so it literally made me ambidextrous because of and so again, we adapt, and again the cast was on, and this is what happens when you don't do your PT every night. So that's as far as like I can't touch my shoulder, on this side. So, um, but it forced me to change and evolve, and so I was, well, it's been a benefit to be able to be, ambidextrous, but it wasn't something I came about naturally. But it was an event that helped me to, again, I had to rewire my whole brain, and I can write with my right hand, but it's very large. I don't have the fine motor skill, but you know, having a cast forced me to grow, to become something a little bit more. So, you know, I still swing a baseball bat or a golf club right-handed, but all the skill is over on this side because that's what I practiced. And I think it kind of rewired my brain a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
And
uh,
there are things to be said about having things broken and having to reevaluate what's important, how you want to do your skill sets. Like I say, when Robert walked out with both arms in a cast that high, I had a little uh, dirty word. I'm in, yes, deep now. And I remember I almost confessed. But I also knew that I was a very quick learner. I had enough exposure from growing up in a farming community that I wasn't like some city kid out of the depths of Minneapolis or Detroit or something who had never seen a cow and still thought that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. You know, I had that much advantage, but I managed to pull it off. I confessed to him the day before I left and went on my way, and he goes, "I was wondering, you you did really good, but there were a couple of questions that you asked where I was like, really?" So there's that part. I think it's the same way with broken hearts. If you look at some of the one of the stories about, I believe it's Japanese pottery. The Japanese, if a precious bowl is broken, they will repair it with gold. And once it's been broken and repaired, it's worth more. And that was kind of a philosophy with them. And so I think if we could take on the philosophy with many of the things that we thought had broken us, but we were able to mend and become stronger, I think makes us more valuable. It goes right along with the latest phenomena that was pointed out when and correct me if I'm wrong or share your experiences, but when I was in school, I had a number of classmates that had a cast at some point in their life. I rarely see kids with casts anymore.
I remember wanting a cast thinking it was so cool and I never got one. So knock on wood, I'm good now.
Yeah, yes. I can say yes and yes. My sister had a cast, and I remember, yeah, when everybody wanted to sign it, and it was so cool, and then a buddy of mine got into a snowmobiling accident, and he actually had a full upper torso cast. Oh yeah, he messed himself up real good. But everybody was signing that thing, and like you say, you're kind of, when you don't know anybody, you're like, well, I want that attention. I don't want to pay the price. I don't want to pay the price for that kind of attention. So, any other inputs, ahas, questions, epiphanies on the cast? Holly.
Oh, just a couple thoughts. So as we're going through this talk, I just keep thinking of kind of three different scenarios. So I know someone who had a cast who pushed themselves way too hard and re-injured themselves, of course. And of course, the second time you were talking about you have to re-break it and start clear over, and it was actually a much worse injury the second time around. But then I'm kind of comparing that to this is a fiction, but and minor spoiler for Parks and Rec, but I think of a character who decided to leave his cast on for an extra week because he was loving the fact that people were taking care of him. And but then I also think of the time that I got to go through when I had to break my jaw. And I remember so it was just to put it back into the right position and everything. So this was like a planned thing. It wasn't like it just broke my jaw, but I kind of remember the humiliation of having to move back with my parents because I am, living by myself, and they said that I wasn't allowed to do that, so I had to do something about it. Um, but anyway, I was just kind of thinking about like those two extremes of this is one of those like the pendulum swings too far one way or too far the other way, and it could be the problem. And for some people, the hard part is getting back into life and taking the cast off and having people not wait on them. But also on the flip side, for some people, the hard part is having the humility to say, you know what, I do have limitations and I have to give myself space to heal. And I'm not gonna push myself before I'm ready and try to do stuff I'm not ready to do. Is actually the strong thing, even though it doesn't seem like it, is to actually take it easy for a short period and give myself space to heal. So I just was thinking how interesting it was, the two sides of the pendulum.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that point up, and especially the little scenario about the guy that left the cast on a little longer because he enjoyed the attention. Secondary gain. We deal with that a lot in our industry of people sometimes have a secondary gain of enjoying the misery because of the attention it gets them. We also had a scenario where a practitioner had a client and they were going in cleaning up stuff, and the client had always had a stutter his whole life. Well, while they were in fixing things, they came across the reason why he stuttered. And so the practitioner fixed it. And a couple of days later, the client came in fuming mad. How dare you take my stuttering away from me? I never gave you permission for that. Most of us would be like, wait, what? Stuttering was part of his identity. It was part of what made him unique. If anybody remembers, if you're old enough to remember who Mel Tillis was, Tillis, horrific stutterer until he sang. And that was part of the unique shtick. When they would interview him, what song are you going to do next? The Rose of Texas. All right, here's Mel Tillis with, and he'd get in there, and as soon as he was on the mic, smooth as velvet. And here come the sirens to help the people with secondary gain. Mark.
Yeah, they found me. I don't know how, but they found me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Run, Marty, run.
yeah, run, Forrest. Something Holly said, one of my squirrels spoke up, and you were mentioning about, if somebody has a broken heart, and relating it to putting a cast on. But, if every time, if they get their heart broken a lot, and, I've had it broken enough. But if they put another cast on top of the first one and another cast on top of the next one, again, pretty soon there's no chance of your heart, you know, um, healing because you just keep putting casts around it. So some people walk around with, you know, as I say, a lot of armor around their heart. So
Yes,
they never, it protects them, it keeps them safe. But I don't know if healing is possible if you keep putting more and more, you know, casts around your heart.
exactly. Exactly. And the other part about having a cast on, it restricts growth. You look at some crustaceans that actually have to molt off their outer shell because it becomes too small. Or like hermit crabs, they'll find the perfect shell and then they get too big and they got to go find another one. But of course, it's in the transfer time of finding another one that they're most vulnerable. Kind of like relationships. If I let you in, don't break anything. Did you still have something to add, Lenora?
I think everybody raised such beautiful points. What's so interesting is if I have an injury, I'm pretty stubborn about it. And I will push through and I will often, especially if it's a physical one, it's like you got to rally. There's no chance for, you can take a light day, but it's not an extended leave. And it's so interesting to hear such everyone's different perspectives of what that looks like when we're in recovery. Now, that being said, there are plenty of times where I have absolutely taken time to recover, mostly because, especially when it's emotional, there was such a long period in my life that I didn't know what to do. And even for some other things that might come up, I might just leave them on the side and not address them because I don't know how to address it. So, you kind of put that cast around it and just for some reason the idea of putting it in Tupperware comes to mind. Like I'm just
Yeah.
gonna put it in a box and hope it stays fresh in there and not look at it. But how we deal with things is very interesting, and I love the idea of um, Mike said this a while back. Childers, he said uh, to ask for his lessons gently. I think that's a
Yes.
really nice way to ask for support, ask for help, and to ask for recovery on whether it's you helping you or other people coming in to help you get to where you want to be.
Great points. Mike.
Um, so I have broken all my limbs, my right arm twice and my left leg twice. So, um, I have
Was not prepared for that.
I have some experience in CAS. And for me, it was that um I didn't ask for help. I just kind of have that thing that I just don't want it. I need to be self-sufficient, and it's hard for me to do that. But what that did create is malleability. So I was able to adapt to do what I needed to do. I carried my own books mm, when I was in high school, uh, backpack when I was on crutches, to the point where I could use my crutches up and down the stairs. So um,
You're that
I'm,
guy.
I'm that
I,
guy.
I, I went to school with that guy.
hmm Spend enough time on crutches, you can do that. So, um, but malleability was really a great skill to be able to draw off of. and just adaptive, adaptive perspective. How can I make it work? So that was that was it happened for me, not to me. So thank you.
So that was the gold repair of the bowl.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Awesome. Holly.
I think it was something TJ said that, and I think I've said this before, but just made me think of this too. So we've got the period where we've got the cast on, but one of the other things we've got to look at is once we get the cast off, a lot of people, you know, say you were, I don't know, skiing. I know somebody broke their leg skiing. Are you terrified to go skiing afterwards? Because I got to make sure I never break my leg again. And because I was thinking about emotionally, a lot of people say I can never ever let anybody in because somebody might come in and break my heart or might, hurt me in some way. And years ago, I had this download that said, if you could get, yes, if you let people in, some of them you're going to judge wrong, you're going to get it wrong. Some of them are going to come into your life and they are going to hurt you. But eventually, if you let the right people in and you could get a couple people that are close enough, they will learn how to mend your heart. They will learn how to fix it. And if you let 100 people in and say 99 of them break your heart, but one of them's able to fix your heart 10,000 times, the amount of good that you're able to get from that one good person is way more than the pain you get from everybody else. And, obviously that could apply to any activity of, are you missing out on life because you're too afraid of getting hurt? The body can heal. The mind can heal. The heart can heal. And, you can live your life in bubble wrap and never have any good experiences and never let that person into your life who can help you heal. Or you could take the advantages. You could go out, you can have fun and risk getting hurt, but actually have lived a life that was worth living.
Great point. And one of my squirrels is jumping up and down with a sign that says, there are a lot of different ways that we get hurt. And when we were kids, there were a lot of different ways that we got casts. There were the ways that had nothing to do with you. Something from an outside source happened, and you just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and blammo, you end up with a cast. Then there were some of the other people that I grew up with that were doing stupid stuff and won stupid prizes. Let's build a bicycle jump about this high. And then we'll come down a big hill and we'll go over the jump. And they learned that the landing doesn't work out quite as good as we saw on TV. And yes, Evel Knievel has broken almost every bone in his body at least once. So there was that. Mark.
Just a quote that I picked up somewhere, I stole from someone. It said, if you're really, really careful in life, nothing good or bad will ever happen to you.
Yes. Yep. The best way to never be judged, never be hurt, all the above, is to hide in a hole and do nothing. And be nothing. It is much better to live. And here we are, 20 minutes left. 2 topics to go.
About right.
So if you guys are okay with that, we're going to move on to a car. And this is going to be a quick interactive question for you guys. If you were a car, what kind of car would you want to be? If you would type your answer in the comment section, I'd appreciate it. If you could be any type of car, what kind of a car would you want to be? Anybody?
This is a very interesting question.
So Mike said a 3/4 ton truck. Mike, you and I are on the same level, same here. Mark is a Corvette, and I'm pretty sure you've owned one, right, Mark?
Yes, I do.
So just waiting to hear from the ladies. If you can't type it in, just tell it to us. Holly.
I guess I'll share what's coming into my head. I don't know if I can type this one. I was thinking about, I don't know if any of you ever played that game, MASH, that turned into Marsh, and basically you'd write two cars you wanted to drive when you grew up, and then the group would give you a crappy one, and then you'd, say who, like, anyway, you'd go around and you'd see count around crossings out till you figured out what you got, and it would be a mix of good and bad things. But I actually would always go for a fictional transport vehicle because that's how delusional I am. So I always picked for those of you who are familiar with Doctor Who, I'd always pick the TARDIS would be my vehicle of choice. Yes.
Time machine. All right, I see where you ladies are going with this. All right. If you had to be a car that you see on the road today, what kind of car would you want to be? Crickets. No idea. Would you want to be a truck? Would you want to be a BMW? Would you want to be a Geo Metro? Would you want to be a Lexus?
Toyota RAV?
Huh?
Toyota RAV?
Toyota RAV? Okay. First thing that pops in your mind when if I told you could go, Holly, if I told you could go to a car dealership and pick out any car that you want, what would it be? There we go, Mark. What year's that one?
1975. That's Sally.
Sally. Right on.
Long, tall Sally. She's so sweet.
Okay, well, we're gonna get moving with this. The next question is, what kind of a car are you today? And what would it take to become that car that you want to be? And who would you allow to be the driver?
Loving the questions and the insights.
I came up with this for one of my triple P clients who happens to be a car enthusiast. So it was an easy metaphor because they didn't know where I was going with this. So when I asked the initial question, if you were a car, what kind of a car would you want to be? A Porsche 911 GT3 RS. Rawr! And all the guys were like, and then I asked him, what kind of a car are you today? And what would it take for you? What would you have to do to change yourself from that car to that 911 GT3 RS? Which is why I call Triple P mainly research and development. It's researching the human condition so that you can develop yourself into what you are capable of being. And yeah, Mike, we support you. You can do this. And Mike, same here. 3/4 ton, pick 'em up truck, super cab, long box, 4-wheel drive, 79 Ford. I'm probably going to torque off a couple of Ford guys back there, but it would have a 12 valve Cummins motor and a paired up to a 5-speed transmission manual. Why? Extremely dependable, and that motor doesn't even need a battery to run. All you got to do is spin it over, get it running, and the only way you shut it off is you shut off the fuel supply. Mark.
Well, I think that's, again, my car is my avatar, again, it's strong, it's powerful, it's a classic, hopefully like me. A little older, but still got plenty of giddy up. Still getting a lot of pedal left, so and might need a little bit more maintenance than I'm giving it right now, but you know, but that's a goal, so um and just but I had that um I've always wanted one, finally got one. Took 30 years to manifest because I didn't know anything about manifestation back then. But, finally got it, fixed it up, got a racing cam and rolling rockers in it. And my mechanic asked me, he said, when he was asking about the exhaust, he said, do you want it to roar, to growl, or to purr? And I think that's another metaphor. I said, yeah, growl.
Awesome. Holly.
Wow, this is a very powerful exercise for me because I found it interesting. Finding what car I wanted to be was really, really hard, but knowing what car I am was really, really easy. And I just kind of was thinking about, I think that actually is kind of because I was afraid to pick one because there's so many good options out there. And if I pick this one, then I can't have this one. And if I pick this one, I can't have this one. But the thought came into my mind, well, that's why you get stuck as the other car, because if you don't even know what you want to be, you have nothing to aim at.
Exactly. Exactly. And part of figuring out what you want to be is the second or the third question. Who do you want driving the vehicle? Who do you want as a partner? Who do you trust to get in there? Now, my client who wanted the Porsche 11 GT3 RS, I said, now, who's your partner? Who's your person? Who can drive that? Bless you. Because they have to know and understand, bless you, how to not only drive a manual transmission, but one that can get pretty squirrely if you don't understand the power to weight ratio and all the above. Mark.
Well, I know that, again, I take my car to parties and, if there's people there that are, admiring it, I'll be like, throw them the keys, uh, because I want them to experience for a few minutes that same joy that I have. So
Mhm.
I don't have a problem throwing the keys to anyone, if they can, if they're, fathers and sons, sometimes is, a couple of, girls that, I think are responsible enough. I'll throw them the keys, while I'm at the party, just, bring it back. But that's the only condition.
And
Yeah, I'm willing to share the joy.
I'm going to use this as a perfect segue into the last topic, interviews. Because even though you trust people with your car, you don't put a sign on the car that says keys are in the ignition, be nice. And when interviewing, there are going to be preferences and non-negotiables. And this is part of the Triple P protocol as well. I put in, when I have people do their journals for their person, I say, put in the stuff that you want and the stuff that you don't want. Research and development, researching the human condition. What do you like about? What don't you like about? What'd you notice? Why'd that stand out? How does that relate to your person? And keep adding. Consider your list to never be done. Because people change. And then you go through and you identify what are your preferences, what are your non-negotiables. Like when I start coaching them on doing the journal, I'll ask them, what is their exact height? What is their hair color? What is their eye color? What kind of car do they drive? What color is it? 4-door, 2-door, all the above. What kind of house do they live in right now? Is it an apartment, a townhome? Do they own a home? Where did they grow up? Was it in the city, in the suburbs, in the country, another country? And then I tell them, as you keep adding, as you keep reading through, as you keep going over these, things will start to stand out in between. Some of these are preferences, some of these are non-negotiables. Especially if it's a guy. I prefer that they have dark hair. I prefer they have blonde hair. I prefer they have straight hair. I prefer. No offense, dude. That can be a preference. Women change that all the time anyway. But if it comes to whether or not they're a smoker or whether or not they're whatever, those can be non-negotiables. And it makes it a lot easier for the selection process. It's not that they're a bad person. I think it was last week. Was it last week or the week before? We talked about 9 to 5. If they show up and they're a 9 or whatever, they're somebody else's king or queen, just not yours, and that's okay. Not everybody is going to be the 3/4 ton pickup type of person. Not everybody's going to be a Corvette type of person. Not everybody's going to be a Ferrari type of person. It comes down to what is their preferences. Now, can I admire a Porsche or a Ferrari or a Lamborghini? Oh, yeah, absolutely, 100%. How come I don't own one? Because that's not my preference. For some people, it is. Does that, if I look at a Ferrari or if I look at a Lamborghini and somebody walks up and says, "You gonna buy it?" And I say, "No," doesn't make it any less of a car. It's just not my car. Would I take it for a test drive? Of course. But I'm not going to buy one. Even if I won the lottery and I won $1 billion, I still don't see myself owning a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. I just get to drive a couple of them, but I wouldn't own them. And so when I help my triple P clients, part of the process is learning how to do the interviews. Values and criteria elicitation, 3 magic questions, echo talk to get them talking, learning how to let the other person talk, how to ask questions without making it feel like an interview. And not letting your emotions get in the way of hearing and seeing what's in front of you. Any inputs, ahas, epiphanies, questions on that? Lenore?
I think this could be done with lots of different things. I'm not so much a car person.
Right.
Oh, I thought you were telling me you couldn't hear it. I'm not so much a car person. And that being said, if I ever need a car, it will always and forever be a Toyota RAV. I'm committed and I'm a customer for life. But there was one thing where you could read things, especially when it comes to taking care of your body. There are so many things that you can read, but when one person says something, it perks your ear in a different way. And I think we've said it 100 times on here at least. You know, you could hear it 1,000 times and 1,001, it shifts. And somebody was talking to me very specifically about appreciating, and this was a couple years ago, appreciating your body and what it does for you, especially when we look at statues, or if you've ever spent any time looking at anything from Italy or some of the statues in Rome and things like that, you really see the artistry of it and the beauty of it. And when you start to explore it and to treat your body with respect and really go back a little bit further and see some other different perspectives, it completely can shift your perspective on how you care for your body. Especially growing up in 80s, 90s, 2000s, it was so different. And even exploring different things about different cultures and what they considered of their body. And sometimes our culture can take away the beauty of it and can really, they're either glorifying it or they're kind of dismissing it, when really, if you spend time with it, you can appreciate it. And then as you start to notice, like, okay, well, how do I want to care for it? How do I want to move in it? What do I want to do with it? It's similar to having that perspective shift about a car. So if it doesn't resonate with you using a car, it might resonate with you doing something else, or just simply looking at your body and who's taking care of it and to what level do you want to take care of it.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because when I was dating in the medical community, a I got to know a number of doctors who were also car enthusiasts, and they said a lot of people take better care of their cars and their pets than they do of their very own body. And then they end up in here going, oh, Holly.
I had kind of a full circle moment here, going back to the original topic. Because when you asked who would you let drive your car, and my first instinct was nobody, including me. And then I kind of had this thought of, even if you keep your car locked up in the garage, it's gonna get dinged, it's gonna get dusty, and worst of all, what happens to a car when it doesn't drive? Ever, ever, ever. It's not
Rots.
for it. Um, and then I just kind of had this flashback to my chemistry teacher when we got our new chemistry books where we were going to keep our logs and everything. And he basically said, if your chemistry book is pristine and it hasn't got splashes of chemicals all over it, you're not a real chemist. When you see, those splashes of chemicals, it gives it character and it proves you're a real chemist. So, get that awesome car, but, take it out, actually use it, and let it get dinged a little bit.
Exactly. Mark.
Well, building on what Holly said, again, I've seen people, like restore cars, absolutely beautiful. They trailer them around to car shows. They push them off the trailer, they polish them up, but they never drive them. And it's like, that's a paperweight,
Yes.
So you can extend the metaphor, car's meant to be driven. And, but if you look at some, object of attraction, if they're just too perfect, too pretty, my attitude is, yeah, that's just too high maintenance,
Sure.
So, um, I'll look at it like you said, the Lamborghini or ultra beautiful woman, but I'm like, yeah, that's just too high maintenance.
And that's why a lot of the top models and actresses and stuff admit that they're very lonely. Because just like with the Ferrari or the Lamborghini or whatever, yeah, I look at it, but I'm like, I don't want to pay that much maintenance and cost and all the above, insurance. And worrying about whether or not it's going to get stolen by some blah, blah, blah. But that also has pushed us over the first hour. Bing, just like that. Time manipulation. First hour disappeared, and now we're into the second hour. Second hour rules are in place. If you joined us late for the first time, with the second hour, anybody on the call gets to bring up questions, topics, and I let the people on the call answer first because I like to learn as well. So, who's got a question to start off the second hour?
Mark's been having them sometimes right away, so I was like, oh, is Mark gonna have one today? No, not so much.
Yes, I have one. I just didn't want to go first, every week. I just, I want, but, then we get into something and it's great. And then it's like quarter of, and I don't want to bring up, my question because it's too deep a subject. But, all right, to start off, I was watching a podcast by the famous Carl Jung, and he was talking about love, and he was talking about, falling in love. They talk about it being chemistry, you just look at somebody and you feel that click. And, is that chemistry. You don't know the other person, but you immediately feel totally safe with them and perfectly comfortable in this connection. But you just met them, and the question that he had was, do we fall in love with people who mirror the missing parts of ourselves? And I just want to throw that out there, something that, is lacking in ourselves that just creates this incredible attraction and chemistry to. He asked it. I don't really have a good answer for it. But I thought it was an interesting question. So do we fall in love with people like that instant? Maybe we fall out of love very quickly because they're not, they don't have all those qualities that those missing parts of ourselves are not all met. So we might fall in love initially and fall out of it, but I don't know if that's, but do we fall in love like love at first sight, with people who mirror the missing parts of ourselves?
Great question. Who's got an answer?
My first question is actually a question off of your question mark. When we talk about the missing parts of ourselves, what does that look like, or what does that sound like? What do you think about that?
Well, if, like I said, say if there's a family unit and, the kids are about 5 or 6 years old, this is what came to mind was that, um, and for every good reason, mom kicks dad to the curb because he's a drug user, he's a no good Nick, whatever. And she kicks him out, for those kids, half of their self just walked out the door. So they spend their entire life that missing part of ourselves as children, we're trying to fulfill that, you know, and without any pejorative, again, I think that sometimes we're trying to fulfill that need, that missing part of ourselves. And I think that happens, like I said, with women, and without any pejorative that women have, daddy issues because in a split family, that strong male presence that they need and they want just walked out the door. So they spend their lives still looking for that. So that's kind of what I read into that question. But I still don't have a real good answer whether or not, like I said, that, love at first sight is, trying to fulfill that need. Does that answer your question?
A little bit. There was actually, I don't know about falling in love with that missing need. I do have a very interesting practice that somebody shared with me that if you're not to help raise your awareness about your gifts, and these are the gifts that you're wanting to give to the world. If you're not aware of it, you might try to seek them in somebody else, but ultimately you find what you're most familiar with. So that I don't think there's a quite the match there. It's a very interesting perspective. I don't necessarily know if you're missing or like that mirror component. For example, when I hear the mirror component, I think, if I was very critical, if I was very criticizing of somebody, I would find that in my partner and I would fall in love with that. So that's where I think the word mirror is throwing me off. But I'm really interested to hear what Holly has to say. I know she always has some very fabulous insights.
Holly.
I also love hearing what Lenora is saying too. We'll hopefully get some more. So the first thought that came to my mind when you asked the question was, I think it depends. It depends on where we are in our life and how healthy we are. Because I think we look for when we're in a healthy, grounded state where, we're self-validating to a certain extent, we can stand on our own, we have healthy boundaries. I think we're gonna have relationships, fall in love, whatever, with people that are very different than when we're, scrambling, desperate, that sort of thing. So that being said, I've heard a few theories. So first of all, Carl Jung, I actually saw a video on this and I only got halfway through the video and fell asleep. So I need to go back and watch the other half. But
Must have been a good video there, huh?
this is what happens when I watch things on my on week. But he was talking about, so this, the people attract, but I heard it said better. They say compliments attract, and I think that happens when we're in a healthy space. Um, but basically, he talks about that there's two kinds of people we attract, and I can only remember one of the two, but one of them was kind of that. He wasn't calling it the missing parts of ourselves, but he was talking about the parts of ourselves that it was kind of like that person who helps us to grow, that person who helps us to see our shadow and helps us to fix it, the person who challenges us. But there are also the times in our life where we attract the mirror image of ourselves. We all talk about NLP is all based on that, finding the person who's matching us, mirroring us, very similar to us. And then I can't remember his name. There was somebody else who gave a whole lecture about, they've done studies on this, that a lot of people are attracted, fall in love with the person who mirrors their earliest experiences of what they thought was supposed to be love.
There.
Why sometimes people who grew up in an abusive home, they think abuse is love because that's their model of love. It's what's familiar. And so they keep getting an abusive relationship after abusive relationship. And so that's why I kind of say a lot of this comes down to, were we in an abusive home? Have we healed that trauma and become somebody new? Or are we still seeking to find what's familiar? Are we seeking to, and I don't know if this is necessarily true, but this thought of when we have a problem and our mind hasn't solved it yet, it keeps looking for opportunities to go through it so it can try to find the solution, possibly. But one other thought to add on top of that I've been thinking about a lot lately is, for those of you who are familiar with Journey of Souls, I'm going to use the word soulmate, but I mean in that version, where they say the average person probably has about 15 soulmates. So it's not necessarily just the one person you're in a romantic relationship with. Anyway, I was reading a book and they were talking about how soulmates, or even people who are just supposed to be significant in each other's lives, they have different things that they agree on that are going to be their signals to recognize each other. And once again, this is getting into woo-woo, kind of situation. But it's I'm going to step on your toes, or when dancing, I think was one that somebody was like, "Oh, that's how I'll recognize I'm supposed to know you because that's going to be familiar," or you know, anyway, so I think sometimes maybe there's somebody that's supposed to be significant in our life, that either there's some kind of sign we agreed on that how we're going to recognize each other, or maybe it's even just being in each other's presence. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I've known you forever. And maybe the reason for that is because you have known them forever. So I think there's kind of a mixture of all of the above. We're solving certain things when we attract those narcissists into our life because we're desperate and they know how to push buttons and they see easy prey. But, and then all the way down to, we designed our life and this person's supposed to be significant in our life. And so that's why they feel so familiar. So I think it just depends.
As always, amazing answers, young lady. Stole a couple of mine. Proud of you. Mark.
Yeah, Holly, like I said, Holly, there's another book out there, One Life, Many Souls. It talks about, that we don't just have one soulmate. We usually bump around with the same 10 or 15 souls in every lifetime. And, but
Love how you say
aside
bump around like bumper cars.
I'll bump into them, you just meet somebody and there's that, that click, that has no rational, reason to be there, but you just feel that connection at a very deep level without knowing the source. But that person could be a soulmate, from past lives. And like I said, the premise of the book is we're always meeting these, we tend to kind of get comfortable with those particular souls. And so from lifetime to lifetime, we keep, meeting up with them. We keep, I said, but going back previous to that, I was thinking that, the false premise that opposites attract. And I don't know how that factors into the question, like I said, but that was a direct quote from from young is that, that we have missing parts of ourselves. And it dates back to childhood, so I don't know, like I said, and I'm very comfortable saying, I don't know, but I want to know. That's kind of my, the driving forces. If I come across something I don't know, I want to try to figure it out, try to, you know, um, sometimes it drives me crazy and it drives the people around me crazy, but I got to know the why.
And
I'm right there with you, Mark.
with all the work I've done with my clients with relationship and stuff, everybody is right. All these answers are right in different alignments with some of the clients that I've worked with. And especially what Holly said was a lot of it is set up in the first 5 to 7 years of our life. How you saw the parents, your best friend's parents, your all of the above. If you were in a very dysfunctional, angry family setting, and the only way that you got attention was to cause disruption or something, and then later on in life, you're trying to recreate, how do I get this attention? Who do you attract? The hothead jerks that like to have fights. And as long as we're having fights, it's just like when I grew up and we're a family. And they'll meet somebody who's really nice and kind who grew up in, the Leave It to Beaver type of family setting. And they find them repulsively boring. And some of them that grew up in that very toxic family will recognize it and realize that it wasn't healthy. And a lot of times those are the ones that reach out to people like us and go, how do I fix this? How do I get rid of this old program? How do I get the upgrade? I want to upgrade. I'm tired of being a Geo Metro with a bad motor and a bad transmission. How do I turn myself into a Corvette? How do I become the best RAV4 out there? And that's where we have to figure out, it goes again, what are you looking for? Who do you have to become to be the person that will attract what it is that you're looking for? And how can you give yourself permission not only to expect the best of what you can think of and dream of? How can you create the ability to become the person that will attract and be able to keep that level of a person? It's really interesting when I have people do their journals, how quickly I can see what their self-image, self-esteem is. I tell them very often, if you set the goal so that basically all you have to do is lay down and touch it, that's not a goal. Anybody, you could do that tripping, falling over, or falling asleep. I would prefer that you have a goal so big that it scares you. I want that star out there. That one. I don't even know how to fly or build a rocket. But in working on yourself to be able to get to that star, you might end up on the moon, which is a heck of a lot better than that goal that you put 4 feet in front of you, just because it was easy and safe and you knew how to do it. Does that help or did that muddy up the water? Clear as mud, they say. Anybody else got anything to add to that? Or do we have a new question, new topic? Mark?
I was gonna say, great points, TJ, and everybody. And I'm just trying to roll the process forward, but I would highly recommend to everybody watching and everyone at home that they watch a movie called What Love Is. And Cuba Downing Jr. is the star of the movie. And I won't give away the plot, but you see all the different avatars of, the male, they have the gay guy, they have the happily married guy, they have the player, they have the you know, environmental, the crunchy granola guy, and all of these different. I want to I'm calling them avatars tonight, but and then you see the female version of all those different ones, and it's very interesting to note, like I said, that all the different their all their strengths and all their frailties, and in the movie there was the player, they've been together since grammar school, and he was talking, Cuba was talking to one of the guys. He goes, I remember now you go after women that you would never want to. You set the bar so low for yourself, like you were saying earlier, TJ, that you select a woman to be with because and you select somebody that you think that they're so far below you that they could never hurt you, and then they dump you and you end up getting hurt again. And that whole idea of again, deservingness, that you kind of was circling around that, and who do you have to become to attract the right person into your life? I just started out with somebody perfect, so it was easy for me.
Awesome. Lenora?
That's so interesting that Holly had shared that you guys had shared multiple soulmates. I don't think I ever entertained the idea. There are so many things that I continue to question. And then when Mark had mentioned about deserving, I wrote this down a couple of triple T's ago, and it just didn't feel like the right fit to bring up. And when we talk about deserving, one question that was a little while before I triple T, and I'm telling you guys, it's like weeks ago, and I just kept repeating this question on repeat. And it was, when did you decide that other people's opinions were more important than yours? When did you decide that? When did you decide that? When did you decide that? And I just kept going over it and over it. And even today, I posted a reel and made a video about enoughness and how do you know you're enough? And it's things that we've absolutely talked about. And it was things that I definitely have struggled with. And, I really try to recognize if I don't feel worthy, if I don't feel deserving, if I don't feel like enough, according to who? What part of me? Who is talking in the gallery that I need to go down and have a conversation with? And it really is so interesting as to, especially when you look at it as kids and you're cheering for your child as they start to walk and you're giving them all of this attention and for years on end, and then suddenly one day the attention shifts and now they're getting a different tone coming toward them. Now they're appropriately starting to learn, and you're, as the parent or the guardian, trying to give them these boundaries, and that all makes sense. But at the same time, it's very confusing to that young mind. And they're like, well, what happened? What changed? Why all of a sudden? And they're trying to figure it out. And then they carry it with them forever until they decide, oh, let me change this. Oh, I don't need this anymore. And I find that remarkable. So even when we start to look at deserving and think, wow, I'd love to be a Ferrari, but I'm not a Ferrari. Who said? When did you decide that? What else goes into it? And there's, I'm very big into analytical things, and I love to know why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, especially when I'm having these, what I lovingly refer to as emotional stretches or this discord and feeling that misalignment. And when I'm looking at things, when I'm writing them down and having a conversation with the younger part, or I'm listening to what else is going on and I'm paying attention to where I feel it in my body. Why is there that discord? And when I start to notice that in that moment, that's my nervous system working to adjust. That's my nervous system working to stretch, working to hold this feeling that it's not okay with, or working to let go of this feeling and pick up a new feeling. And when we feel like we're not deserving, when we feel like we're not enough, we might have that ache, we might have that heart and that discomfort and that twist. I don't know if anybody's as dramatically somatic as me. But that's what it feels like. And when we come into this deserving place, to sit with it and to really have somebody there with you that is willing to look at it again and again and again with you, because it can take your nervous system a while to start recognizing it's okay. You can be a Ferrari and you can feel really good about being a Ferrari if that's what you want. And I just find it so interesting. So if somebody's struggling with that, go back. When did you decide that? And then keep questioning that version of you, that voice, that part, whatever is coming up. Keep questioning that story and question it in a curious way, not in a judgmental way.
Incredible. Holly.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I cannot for the life of me remember what book this is from, but it reminds me of a book I was reading, and it was talking about the early phases of childhood development. And they were talking about that basically the child has certain points where they need to learn certain things. And so they were saying in the first, I think it's about 18 months of life or so, the child basically all they are capable of learning um, is the world safe? Do I have support? And so, at that point, the parent's there. You cry in the middle of the night because you're so vulnerable, and you haven't even learned the concept of me and you yet. And but then it talks about at some point, the child needs to be able to learn, to separate the you and the me, and so they'll start venturing out into the world. And some parents, first of all, in the first phase, they won't be there when they need to be there. Maybe they think they need to teach their child to be independent at, 2 weeks old or something. I need to let them cry it out, and once again, this may even come from a good place. It may even come from years of, bad teaching or whatever, but it's actual philosophy and they're reading books and parents are doing the best they can with the resources they have, so this is not about judging the parents, but, so some kids don't learn they have a support system, and that can have a certain impact on your self-worth and your feelings of deservingness. However, what happens is then you get to the next phase, and I can't remember exactly the order of the phases, but one of the phases is the phase of separation. So this is where the child is going to crawl away from mom and realize this is okay. and it's safe to go out, and I could always come back and mom will still be here. And I say mom, it could be dad as well. Or even, siblings or other caretakers. But some parents get so freaked out that their kid's leaving them and they've become so codependent and interdependent in this relationship that as soon as their kid tries to walk away, they immediately go and grab them and hug them and want to cuddle when the kid is trying to explore the universe. And that could install a certain feeling of deservingness and a feeling of safety and everything. Um, and like I said, I can't remember exactly the order that these happen in, but the other two important phases are kids learning to hear the word no and kids learning it's okay to say no. And so sometimes, some kids, they say no and the parents come down so hard and it's, you're never ever going to say that again. How dare you ever say no to me? And they're talking about, this really has an impact on feelings of deservingness. And they say a lot of, for example, victims of domestic violence, they had their parents come down really hard on them when they tried to say no. And they were taught, you're not ever allowed to say no. You have no autonomy. But then there are also, of course, because what I was thinking is, it's a balance of what do other people's opinions matter? Well, if I'm not allowed to say no, everybody else's opinions matter more than anything. But then the other one is if I'm never allowed to hear no, my parents just do everything for me because they want to be my best friend and they're not willing to say no to me even when they need to. That's when I learned the flip side of my opinions matter so much and nobody else's opinions matter at all. So once again, it's that balancing act. But a lot of us don't realize that our feelings go clear back to something as innocuous as our parents when we were 2 years old, either not letting us explore or not letting us come back. Maybe they were there for us too much. Maybe they weren't there for us at all. Maybe they never said no to us, or maybe they always said no to us. And maybe it wasn't even a lot. It may just have been at that crucial moment, the first time we were testing to see if it was safe to say no. They just came down really hard, and they did it 3 times, and so we never tried again. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. These feelings of deservingness, these feelings of independence, codependency, whatever, can go back to something as simple as not going through one of those 4 phases. And I think that if we can understand that, we could go back to that younger version of ourselves and give them the opportunity to do whatever it was that they didn't get to do. Give them the resources they had, and if that's saying no to them, that sometimes is the most loving thing we could do too. So.
Yep. Lenora.
There's so many beautiful things in there, Holly. And I totally agree about things coming up when we're younger. And one of them really that sticks out to me, and it still boggles my mind to this day, is how we cheer for children. Yay, you ate everything on your plate. You're getting so big. Oh my goodness. And then one day, you're too big. One day, you gained weight, and one day the doctor is looking down at you, and your parent is looking down at you, and it is not a good thing. And suddenly, you are covered in shame. To this day, will blow my mind. I just don't get it. There was something else that I wanted to say, and squirrel ran away with it. All right, I'll come back.
While you're waiting for your squirrel to return.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember what seminar this was at, but it was about relationships, and it could have been like a Tony Robbins or somebody like that. Anyhow, he said, how many of you think your parents could have, should have, or would have done better? Raise your hands. Everybody's raising hands. He goes, cool. Out of curiosity, raise your hands if you are 25 years old or younger. So a bunch of them raised their hands. Then he said, raise your hands if you're 45 years old or older. They raised their hands, and he goes, all of you with your hands up right now, those were your parents. All of you that raised your hands earlier, these are your parents. They still don't have it figured out. You didn't have it figured out when you were their age. It's up to you to figure out who you want to become. It wasn't your parents' fault. They did the best they could. That's why you're still here. That's why you're trying to change. And that hit me. I was like, ooh, yep. And go ahead.
I'm so glad you went back to that because it's exactly where I was going.
Oh,
Is that they say a lot of the work that you do, that personal growth component, is learning to reparent yourself. And here's the interesting thing, at least for me, there are lots of voices in here, guys. Some days I lose counts, some days I just go really general. But I don't think I realized that there are times where you will have to not just coach yourself, you will have to reparent yourself in the moment throughout your day. It seemed like, when I first heard this concept, it was like, oh, you'll go through this phase. There's a beginning, there's an end. There hasn't been a freaking end for me, just so we are clear. It is a constant conversation up here. And there are days where it's a lot of the time is talking the little one down and being like, you gotta calm down. And other times it's like, just intense as a church mass and there's no problem whatsoever. So I find it very interesting. So whether you want to call it reparenting, whether you want to call it coaching yourself, whatever you want to call it, you can definitely find ways to help yourself. And that is what I love about personal growth and the hypnosis world and NLP and studying all things related to language.
yes. Mark.
Yeah, great insight, Lenora, as always. And but we're again, it's about what we're taught, basically. And again, kids seem to make friends naturally, easily. But I was watching this podcast, and the guy had like 3 or 4 different qualities, because when you're going through school, whether it be, elementary or junior high or high school, you're with the same people all the time. And usually we make friends through proximity, and then you get comfortable with them, and, you have those experiences that, but when we get out into the real world after college, we don't have that proximity, except maybe at the job. And of course, that never turns out poorly. But we don't really have we have to learn how to navigate adult relationships. And it's something we were never trained from. We never had, modeled, throughout our lives, because we always had the proximity of our people our age, and you're comfortable with them. You feel, some degree of safety with your classmates. But when you get in the adult world, again, all the rules change, and you have to learn how to, at that age, you have to figure out how to negotiate, which is why I think everybody needs PPP, TJ. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate that endorsement.
Get that training, as kids.
Yeah. And you hit on a really strong point, is especially if you never traveled much and you didn't get put into situations where you had to go out of your comfort zone and start meeting people again. And, I grew up in a tiny village, 187 people, when I was growing up in farmland, Minnesota. Everybody knew everybody knew everybody, and my grandmother wrote the gossip column for the local newspaper. For me, Mayberry wasn't a TV show, it was a documentary. Same with Grumpy Old Men. If you want to see where I grew up, watch the movie Grumpy Old Men and Grumpier Old Men, and watch to the end till you get to the bloopers. Completely worth it. They're amazing. Squirrel. But that's why I'm such a proponent, cheerleader for travel. Travel is one of the few things you invest in that makes you richer. And getting out and seeing other cultures, other people, meet the people you meet on the way, and learning how to communicate. Learning how to be put in situations where people don't agree with you. Finding out that the judgments that you easily placed on somebody were incorrect. Finding out the things that you were taught as a kid maybe weren't real, maybe weren't true. Maybe that opinion that your parents or your best friend's parents or whatever wasn't right. And it allows you to figure out who you are. I will always say I think the year that I lived in Europe working and traveling was the best thing I ever did for myself. Because I went there by myself, didn't know anybody, and didn't speak the language other than enough to get myself in trouble. And it really allowed me to figure out who I wanted to be. And it made it hard to come home because they knew who I used to be and tried to push me back into that tiny little box. And I was like, that person doesn't exist anymore. Kind of like calling up an old phone number. Beep, the person you are trying to connect with is no longer at this number. Thank you. And it was hard for some of my friends. They got mad because I didn't agree with their small town ideas as much anymore. And that's okay. One of my clients that I was working with today, I had to remind them that people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lesson. And the season could be your entire life. Best friend growing up, knowing them, they were always there, could always call them. Awesome. But there are also people that are in your life that make an impact that you spent 5 minutes with. They said something at the right time and it clicked and you didn't even get their name. You got the lesson. And I've caught myself a number of times pining for some of the people that I was able to become friends with quickly, easily. It was just that easy. They were that amazing. And I only know them in my memory now. But I got to meet them. I got to experience that, and I can't sit there and lament over the fact that it was only for a season or a reason or a lesson. Any input, ahas, comments on that?
Oh, that makes me sad.
Oh,
Sometimes I like when people are around for a really long time, and I don't like when they disappear. I cut Holly off, so I'm going to stop talking.
oh no, but I fully agree with what you said. Because yes, there are some of those people that, I've got tons of photos. I'm a collector of images and photos and have been my entire life, right, Mom? But I look through some of my old photo albums and see people that, like the crew that I worked with in Yellowstone. What an amazing adventure that was. That was in '88 when the big 200-year forest fire went through. And there's only one, or yeah, only one person from that event that I still communicate with. But tons of people in the pictures. Holly.
I hate when Lenora censors herself. It's fine. I'm okay to take my turn. Um, it's I don't know why this is kind of my mind is kind of combining what Lenora said with what TJ said. And I don't even know if this will make sense, but I just kind of was thinking about because the cuteness factor, and like at one point you're young enough that you're cute enough that we're gonna let you fail all the time and we're gonna give you a pass. And um anyway, and then talking about the people who come into our lives for the season, the reason, the lesson, whatever. And I was thinking about building our own tribes. I swear this all goes together. um so as the oldest child in my family, because I was thinking about the cuteness factor. One of the things I learned is that cuteness is relative. So if you are sitting there and you're the youngest, you're the cuter one, you get the pass. This is when you're kids, but if you're the older one, you don't. And I learned this because I think I was about 5 years old, and my 2-year-old sibling, stole my toy. And I was basically told, you're the older one. You've got to be responsible. They don't understand. Just let them take it. Now, I understood that. That I accepted, right? But then I became the 8-year-old sibling, and my 5-year-old sibling stole my toy. And I was told the exact same thing. They're younger, they don't understand, be the bigger person. And I remember when I was a kid, I'd remembered it. I'd hyperfixated on this, and I thought, wait a minute. When I was 5 years old, I was old enough to not only not steal steal somebody else's toy, I had to let somebody steal my toy. Why is it when they're 5 years old, all of a sudden they're not old enough to understand this factor? And that used to like really grate on my nerves. I didn't understand it. And then I got older, and as an adult, I realized I was doing the same thing, because I was buying into I wasn't thinking it through, and it was just, you just want the kids to stop crying and stop fighting. And you look at it and you see the older one, and it's a relative thing. It's you're older, you can handle it. The younger one probably can't as much. So I'm going to ask the one who's more capable. But on the flip side, something I noticed that I probably didn't realize as much as a kid was also the oldest one gets trusted with more responsibility, and they're given more opportunities on that side. And one of the things that kind of just popped into my head is, I think this is why we have our family of birth and our family of choice, because I think we need times in our lives when we get to be the older one and we get the responsibility and we get to learn to be the bigger person. But we also need times in our life when we're, treated as cute, and we're given I'm not going to say a full pass, but, maybe given grace, maybe given a little bit of understanding, a little bit more of that cheerleader kind of moment. And, even just being in a different group by default could give you different responses. But also, more importantly, if you learn to surround yourself with people who are young at heart, that are always going to be cheerleaders for everybody, no matter what age they are, you could still get those experiences even in adulthood that you maybe didn't get as much when you were younger, that you missed out on, or at least felt you missed out on. So I think that's why we have the ability to pick our tribes when we get older, partly too, is so we can have those different experiences with people who take a different approach to life. And just because we didn't get it as kids doesn't mean we can't get it.
As always, great insight. And of course, one of my squirrels had to run up and remind me of, I'm the oldest of three. And one of the jokes I heard the other night on TV is said, for those of you that are parents of multiple kids, you know how it goes. When that first kid is born, you're like, everything, oh my gosh, we only feed him organic grown carrots, purified with and served with fountain water that has been triple filtered. And then by the time you got the fourth kid, the kid's crawling out in the yard, no diaper on, and chewing on one of the dog's old bones, and you're like, he's safe, he's good. And by the way, just saw that Mr. V, the famous Mr. Greg Verigi, popped on, and I heard it's his birthday. And Mr. V, I still remember you as my art teacher, driving your Volkswagen Beetle. Yes. Thank you for being around and being part of my life that long. Back in Miltona, Minnesota. Times were good. So I
Well,
hope
now
you're.
Mr. V can verify if Grumpy Old Men is really Minnesota based and if the bloopers are accurate.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Mr. V.
Here's to you, brother. Yes, sir. Well, that leaves us with 8 minis to wrap up. Anybody else got any other ahas, epiphanies, comments, or like we've done the last 4 times, a major topic that we can, 2-hour topic we can squeeze into 8 minutes? Somebody, anybody? Otherwise, we're just going to have to start talking about life and times of small town Minnesota.
I mean,
One thing that I will point out, and Mr. V can also verify, the Miltona Elementary School that I attended, where I first met Mr. V, had that playground filled with playground equipment that is outlawed and banned by most people these days. We had the 2-story stainless steel slide that in the summertime could actually give you a skin graft, but in the wintertime, you could actually hit Mach 9 on a sled, and some of us may or may not have built some jumps at the bottom of that slide. We also had the swing sets attached to that height that we were able to swing almost a story and a half high. And what else did we have? We had the tornado slide, which was a new addition in 5th grade. And we had the monkey bars, which were solid metal pipe. Who's coming over to say hi? Anybody I know? I know that face. Awesome. I'm so glad you got somebody up there helping you celebrate your birthday. Now that you're what, 52 again or something like that? Maybe a little more? Yes, there's a lot of good good memories, good times there. Also, a lot of people may not know, but Mr. V also became one of the area's premier wedding photographers and event and family photographers. And we were actually in mild competition when I bought my studio. Yes. And then we both retired our cameras. I've still got mine behind me. So, look at there. There we are. Yes, sir. That's what I'm talking about. We're going to end up having our camera wars now.
I was going to say camera wars.
Yeah, I've got my big Mamiya back there and my mid-size Mamiya over there.
I love that Mr. V is a Nikon fan.
Yeah. One more thing that we got to discuss, because then I switched over. My first digital camera was a Canon D20. Oh, yeah. Let me guess now. I drive a Ford. Is that thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay. We're going to finish off the night with going to the polls with Mr. V.
Too funny.
You guys are awesome. What a great way to finish this one off. Anybody else got anything they want to add before the last 2.5 minutes click off the clock?
I will add something. So I don't know if anybody's ever listened to Abraham Hicks, and he would say, channeled whatever entity, they would say something like, all is well. And Louise Hay would say, things are always working out for me. Things are always working out for me. And I quite literally would have a voice in the background or like a sting going like, but what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't? And since learning about reality transurfing and things that Joe Dispenza teaches and talking about the space of variations and the quantum field, I've now since felt a lot better with saying things are always working out for me. Just continue to put it out there, continue to put it out there. And the thing that I now say is, I'm the one that good things are happening to. Good things are always happening for me and around me. I just know it. And it's been really, really helpful. And I highly recommend having that mantra just going off in your head all day long.
Because even when it doesn't work out or doesn't go as planned, we can just simply look at the lesson that was inside of it, and we don't have to hang on to the schmutz that came along with the lesson.
That is very true.
I know, because I've been through some pretty thick schmutz in my life, and it all helped to align me to end up here, being able to talk with you guys and hosting this and putting this on for 172 episodes.
Woohoo! Pretty awesome.
And we're just going to keep it going as long as we can. And I appreciate you guys taking your precious commodity of time and serving it and offering it up here. Again, not just for me, but to benefit anybody we can. Anytime, anywhere, for any reason. And there's always something to learn, and you guys teach me so much. And so thank you. I appreciate y'all. please go out into the world and live full throttle in whatever vehicle you want to be, and figure out whatever add-ons and options you want to add. Let me know if there's any way I can help you out. For those of you in YouTube land, love you, Mom. Thanks for tuning in. And until next week, take care. Love you. Live well. Bye.
Happy Easter, happy Passover.
Yes, thank you. Happy Easter, everybody. Happy Passover.